Welcome, everyone. My name is Ed Mills. I'm with the Colorado Broadband Office. We're so fortunate that you have joined us today. We hope that this session will be beneficial to you. We are excited about the subject matter. And this August monthly Lunch and Learn features Bob Fifer with the Colorado Department of Transportation. And Bob is going to update our stakeholders about the work CDOT is doing around the state to support broadband infrastructure. I have had the distinct pleasure of working with Bob for many, many years. He's a trusted friend. He's somebody that I respect. He knows very much about what he's doing in multiple areas, and we appreciate him taking the time out with us today. Just before I introduce Bob a little more, just wanted to mention that during the presentation, out of respect for the speaker, if you could, keep those microphones muted. And definitely when Bob opens it up for questions or comments, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask Bob what you will. You can also use the chat feature, and I will monitor that to the best of my ability, and we'll help Bob with field those questions as they come up. I think, for me, Bob is a trusted friend. Bob is responsible for intelligent transportation systems statewide across our state, as we all know, in this state of Colorado, and the challenges that we have from time to time moving around. It is a very, very important job. He's responsible for technology strategies and asset management of roadside technologies, systems, and fiber optics on the statewide highway system. And we are very, very excited to have Bob with us. And so anyway, Bob, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Ed, and that was very nice of you. Yes, we've known each other before I started even working at CDOT. Ed knew me as the vice chair of the FirstNet governance committee for when we were evaluating FirstNet under Governor Hickenlooper. So we've gone back a long time, and our paths continue to cross. So I guess we're meant to be together more, Ed, in different capacities. So today, I am honored and privileged to present to you all a little lunch and learn. Hopefully you learn a little bit more about what CDOT is doing and has been doing, and under some of its statutes to leverage its right-of-way to not only expand its needs in transportation to improve the safe operations and security of our interstates and highways, but it also can be leveraged to expand rural broadband and other opportunities, and I'll go into some details. I'm not going to show too many pictures because one is there will be an ask in this presentation, and I hope you all stay tuned. I do want to give a shout out to my New Mexico DOT friend. Is that you, Gavin? I think it is.
Yes, it is. Hi, Bob.
Well, thanks for joining us here in Colorado. We appreciate that very much. So I've spoken to Gavin and his team several times around these topics, so I'm glad you joined today. So that being said, first off, why does CDOT do fiber? I think we should start at the very beginning of why, right? Well, it's been 25 plus years. There's been a push within the DOTs to improve communications to intelligent transportation systems. And what is that? Intelligent transportation systems are devices like cameras, traffic signals, we do car counting, detection, wildlife detection, avalanche detection, all these things that need stable, solid communication. The DOT has, US DOT and DOT have federally required activities that one, you get funding based on technology going on the road, you get funding putting fiber in the road. So if you start at the national level, we are actually federally required to do some of these activities, both regulatory as well as operationally, to improve the safe use of our interstates and our right-of-way. And so that is why DOTs are doing that. Some DOTs are more advanced than other DOTs. So, it's state statutes are different in different states. That's just a different layer of how we can deploy and when we can deploy. We're very, very privileged in our state that our legislators back in the late 90s actually passed a P3 statute that allows CDOT to swap, barter, or compensate for the use of the right-of-way. Why is that? That is because CDOT is one of the few states that have majority of its interstate is owned right-of-way by the state, where many other states either are leasing their land that the interstate rides on, or it's under BLM or U.S. Forest Service, or even in some states out east, the private property owners actually own up to the center line of the interstates still. So it's very interesting that that our state is, I don't know, lucky, as some other DOTs would say. We're lucky that we have our own right-of-way. So you got to look at the foundational things that we build on to get to where we are today. Like I said, the state legislators gave us that empowerment to get into P3s for leveraging our right-of-way, and we do that. Before we go down those paths of how we use our right-of-way and how fiber and rural broadband is tied in, I think it's best that everyone understands furthermore the why. So I am going to share my screen on a few things. I am going to share basically what is, let's make sure, can everyone see that? I'm assuming you can see that. All right, sorry, my screens get moved around, so I get a little lost. So I'm gonna move you over here. So, I don't wanna move that because then you will lose it. So basically what ITS Network Services is for the DOT is it's really broken into 4 groups. In fact, I'm making a 5th group right now. It's a division I run within CDOT. We have program support, which basically focuses on all the assets, asset management, asset inventory, and some budgeting. And utilities. Utilities is a big topic because we are a very large utility consumer with lighting everything up and having power hooked to everything. I do have a utilities office within my group. Network services, we provide bandwidth within CDOT. We connect all of our devices, we connect all of our systems, we collect all the data, all that falls within our network services arm. In my field operations arm, that's my maintenance arm. They're the folks that are in the bucket trucks on the side of the road, actually repairing the devices, repairing the fiber, actually doing preventative maintenance. I have over 25 properties, buildings that have electronics in them that are aggregating and creating circuitry, say back to our data centers. I have 2 big data centers. And field operations kind of maintains all that, as well as our warehouse. And then I have an engineering arm that actually does the specs and standards and actually deployment of technology on the road, that being fiber or putting in those big message boards over the highway. That's what my team's made up. One thing it does not illustrate is that I'm personally responsible for doing any negotiations on public-private partnerships or public-public partnerships. And any access fiber we have, we can lease, and any use of our right-of-way is also moved into an agreement, and then you can get your permits. Why? I still want to go further into the why. When you look at our assets, these are all of our assets that use fiber in some way or another. In this green area, this is fiber. All the blue areas, all the different kind of assets we use to operate our highway. These are short-term, but side-fied radar, cameras. We talk to connected autonomous vehicles called RSUs, RWIZs, weather stations. We gather weather information. VSLs are those variable speed limits. DMSs are the digital or dynamic message boards that are over the highways. TTIs are toll tag indicators. What we do is we watch the toll tags and how long does it get from point A to point B. We're not charging you. We're just seeing the toll tag come through, and we know how long it took you to get from Denver to Silverthorne. That's how you get the travel times of a buck. We have blink out signs that will turn on if there's fog, or lane usage, the little square black signs. They're usually dark above each lane. They will put an X or an arrow if there's a problem with the road. All of this has to leverage in some way or another fiber optics. And that's why we build it. Now, these other components are just, other components we got to manage and maintain to support all of this technology and services that are federally required on us. But let's go over this map. I don't know if this is a good map to show. Hopefully it will go into a slideshow in the wrong spot. It always goes in the wrong spot, doesn't it? I'm going to just zoom in here. Is that good for everyone still? Ed, does that look okay? All right. But let me go back up to this. This is our fiber, and I know it's a little hard, and we can share these maps with anyone who wants them. I have actually KMZs if you're interested as well. But the blue lines are fiber that exist. The green lines are either going through a public-private partnership or they're being deployed by CDOT. This is where we're expanding. One of our goals is to make sure our interstates are covered with fiber from state line to state line. We're getting there, and we plan to be probably to every state line other than Nebraska right now, because we're only going to get up to Sterling. We don't have enough money to get to Nebraska, but all the other states, even down to New Mexico, will be probably done by next year, end of next year. We're also trying to expand to get into the Four Corners. We currently have a P3 that we have signed, and they're actually coming up from 550 out of Durango, which is over here, excuse me, and coming all the way across up diagonally to Denver. So that will be a new line that will come across there, and that partner will be deploying that hopefully in the next couple of years. And that will solve a lot of rural broadband issues from the Four Corners all the way up. So when we do these, you know the purpose of why we do them. We also use, like I said, getting into the P3s. We get into those P3s when they're wanting to leverage our right-of-way to build more than 3 miles into our right-of-way. We've kind of put a threshold there because we don't necessarily want to create agreements and paperwork under 3 miles of the use of our highways or interstates. We would rather do that at a higher number. If it's under 3 miles, it's just a regular permit. If it's over 3 miles, it requires some form of compensation for the use of the right-of-way, and that could be through swapping, bartering, or financial compensation. But one of the things we need to be focused on is which corridors are important to us. Well, part of our resiliency plan, based on our last audits and so forth, is how do we make sure that certain interstates stay protected? Like we would need to create fiber on these back routes to ensure that the most of the interstate, if it's cut, that the interstate stays up and operational during weather events. We also create a ring over here. They're not defined perfectly on which road we take. We're just trying to show that we got to create a physical ring in this area to protect the interstates if there is a cut, which does happen. But it also could be this way. So we can look at trying to build fiber from Walsenburg to Lamar up to Burlington, or have a partner that comes in on what we call a high freight corridor or high traffic corridors that come in and will require an agreement so that we can create these rings that we're looking for. So I know that was kind of high level, but let's get into let me go ahead and shut this off so I can actually look at all you know. Oh, you got to bear with me. Stop sharing. All right, now we're back. And I'll show a different map a little bit later. So what is CDOT doing with access fiber or the right of way? So we're doing a couple different things. In our statute, it's not prescribed, and that's a good thing. And I think it's very important to understand that it's not prescribed and it doesn't have a lot of detail. And here's why. There has been situations that have been actually beneficial. One of the kind of the rule sets we work in when we're trying to negotiate a P3 on the right of way for the use of our right of way, what we try to do is I try to look for 3 wins, 3 W's. A win for the private industry, a win for government, and a win for the constituents who are also the consumer to the industry, right? So let's just walk through a scenario. If a telecom or an ISP or some sort of provider is in there and they want to use our right of way and they want to build 100 miles or whatever, and we got to figure out how we can make sure it's beneficial for them, which is we're the largest landowner in the state, you know, from a, we'll say, contiguous landowner in the state. And then do we find a win for the transportation system, which by statute and by law, we have to, when we give access to unregulated services like fiber on there, we have to show some sort of benefit to the transportation system. And we have to define that. So if somebody says, well, look, I'm going to go ahead and I want to do 100 miles on your right of way, and we will give you fiber or conduit or combination of for compensation for it, and that's the bartering, then what we say is, yes, that adds value to the transportation system because now I can put cameras up and weather stations so there's safe passage. I can put up message boards to communicate to folks more reliably. Some people will say, well, why wouldn't you use cellular for that? Well, problem is it's not always reliable. As you know, there's always outages or there's gaps or data feeds are real slow. I can't stream, so I can't monitor the camera to see if there is stranded motorists in a blizzard out in the plains. And so fiber has been the most reliable form of communication for us. So we try to put everything as much as we can on fiber, and where we can't, we will use wireless, but eventually we would like to move to fiber. But when we go through that, that's how I prove that there is benefit to the P3. One of the other things we can do is there is an access fee that could also be done. If they say, well, I just want to pay an access fee, we go through a process with our right-of-way managers that will go in and evaluate what the access valuation would be based on maybe county records of land valuation, and come back and say, well, if you were to take 6 square feet all the way up 100 miles, then this would be what an annual cost would be to have access to the right-of-way. So there is that form as well. In that area there, maybe could have some further prescription. I am going, the ask here is I am looking to send out a survey with collaboration with the Colorado Broadband Office and OIT, is to send out a survey around this, because some of my partners don't want any prescription around it and some do. And so I'd like to solicit more hard information of just opinions of anybody, any stakeholder that's interested in this topic. I'd be curious what is thought of around this. One of the things, like when we talk about rates that other DOTs are doing, like Arizona DOT, I'm very interested in, they are charging a access fee of anywhere between 75 cents to $1.50 per foot, any longitudinal access to, access to the right-of-way. Crossing the right-of-way, they don't charge, but going along the right-of-way, there is a per foot charge annual fee. That is interesting to us. That is something we could publish and make it more transactional through our permitting process. So that is going to be an ask of folks that would like to join in and maybe weigh in on a survey that, like I said, the Colorado Broadband Office in collaboration with CDOT are going to send out. And then around the P3s, when we talk about bartering and swapping, it's interesting because in some cases we're interested in maybe a route that at one point before legislation was there, fiber was on one of our highways, but we're interested in getting better safety on that right away. So they may have already pre-existed some cables that were there, and we may do a swap. I may say, well, I'll give you, 12 strands of 10 miles if you give me 20 miles of 6 strands on this road or in this environment. Or another thing that has happened, some of the carriers that we've dealt with, or some of the service providers we've dealt with, have said, well, look, can we have a pair of fibers from you, and in return we will give you cloud access to the cloud or an internet circuit. And so because it's not prescriptive, it allows the flexibility for us to benefit off of each other's products. My product is a fiber. Other companies or ISPs or service providers or telecoms have different products that they can give, and we can do a swap or barter for it. Most of those carriers or providers have been very interested in it because it's pennies on the dollar. And to me, the value of it is higher than the cost. So obviously, if somebody would give, I don't know, just an internet circuit to one of our locations, and I gave some fiber, the operational expenses are minute and we both benefit. And at the end of the day, in my eyes, the traveling public and the taxpayers have saved some money in having that type of partnership. So it's been very good for us to have these kind of open relationships. We also have public-public partnerships that have also come out of this. We've actually, in some cases, we've had discussions. We haven't signed these just yet, but they are in discussion, where some of the municipalities or counties or cities ask for fiber from us, and in return they may snowplow the highway for us in that section of their limits. Our state statute allows us to have that kind of bartering opportunity, because maybe there's a highway that we don't plow enough or fast enough and it's caused some issues. Well, we reduce our operating expenses by leveraging our assets and saying, well, then we'll give you fiber in return if you'd like to take care of this plow it when it snows kind of event. There's value in that. And so we enjoy having those open and flexible conversations. But again, there's still some thought that maybe we do have some prescription around it, and that's where we're going to be reaching out and asking what are we looking for, and how can we do business differently or better? If this is not flexible enough, what would make it flexible? Or if we need to be prescriptive, what does prescription look like in these discussions? Because at the end of the day, my interest is obviously that we have a safe, accessible transportation network that supports freight and commerce, as well as regular public traveling and visitors safely across our state or within our state. That being said, what do we do with this valuable asset as well as excess fiber that might be available as well? So I know I've shared a lot about our program around fiber and how we work and why we use it. I'd like to pause just for a minute. I did speak almost 20 minutes, 25 minutes straight. So Ed, do we have any questions so far?
I haven't seen any in the chat room, but please feel free to unmute yourself. If you have a question for Bob, or go ahead and place a question in the chat area.
Hey, Bob, it's Gavin. Just real quick. I love the approach and the non-prescriptive and the flexibility that offers. Just kind of one of the challenges that I kind of see happening is company A gets a deal that kind of sets a precedence for down the road. Have you seen any of that, or how do you handle those types of situations?
Yeah, first and foremost, you always want to start with treating them all as equal as possible, right? I mean, I could see where you're going with it. There is, the Telecom Act of 1996 about, equality and so forth. And we should try our best to keep some of those deals as close to the same as possible. But every situation is slightly different. I will tell you, we like to start with a conversation. So once we receive an unsolicited proposal for the use of our right-of-way, it usually starts out with, and I skipped this part, unfortunately. So if you come in and you say, well, I want to use your right-of-way, I have to receive an unsolicited proposal. That unsolicited proposal says we need to use 100 miles of this highway, and in return for compensation, we're going to do X. It's whatever they would like. Let's just say they're going to say we're going to give you fiber. So usually we'll come back and say, well, it needs to be valued for the use of the right of way. And our consistent answer would be, typically, we'll just say this is on interstate. We request that there's conduit and fiber and pole boxes associated to that request, so that we can get into a master service agreement. We start with that, and then we cater it to the conversation, because that might change based on economics of the private side. It might change because there's needs that they're trying to achieve, like rural broadband, but they're all unique. Now, some of those, I will tell you, some of those, they're trade secrets. And so unfortunately, those MSAs and those task orders have to be redacted. So not everyone knows exactly what was traded or swapped, but there was what we would consider fair compensation for the use of the right-of-way for that section. And so to even further dive in, Gavin, into your question, let's just say somebody down in the rural parts along New Mexico, like Highway 60 for us, that let's just say they're going to Chama, right? That valuation and that situation might be a lot different than I-25 going through Raton Pass down, because one's an interstate, one's a highway, one has a higher population and more issues and more traffic, whereas this one may have less traffic, rural broadband issues. And so the swapping and bartering, I think there's rationale to make them slightly different. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
now,
it does.
But I would add, if it's on the same exact, because no one has exclusive rights to our right of way.
Right.
If it's in the same exact spot, we should be asking for the same exact thing, right? I would stay as consistent as possible. Now there is a question about, and I'll get into weeds here a little bit. There is a question about, well, look, if you already got a conduit with fiber, why do you need another conduit with more fiber? What you could end up doing, and we have done this where we have multiple carriers asking for the same thing in the same area, is we've said, okay, look, you can overpull this area if you overpull our cable over here and give it to us, because we don't need that much duplication. And so at the end of the day, is it valuable, and is it equitable for both parties? So
perfect.
That's why we want to stay a little not prescriptive, but we want to get as close to consistency as possible in the exact same situation.
I like it. Flexible but consistent.
Exactly. And you got to be committed to that, and the carriers and telecoms and that providers need to know that that's how we want to work, right? Because again, go back to the three wins, right? A win for them, a win for the DOT, and a win for the constituents who are also the consumers of the industry.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Gavin.
Hey,
Hopefully that
Bob.
was not a long-winded answer.
It was very thorough. It was good. So we have a few questions, and I'm not sure whether or not you'll be able to talk about this, but number one, this one comes from Nancy. Who is the partner for the stretch from Durango? And can you please discuss the Southwest Colorado fiber you're considering more?
Okay, so the partner is Arcadian. Arcadian, we had just signed. It's, everything's going to be public information. We have already signed that agreement, and they will come up through the 550 corridor up to Durango, across to 160 all the way to Del Norte. I don't know where they're going to turn, but they're going to go up to Saguache and come
285.
I was going to say 7, but that's federal, but 285 diagonally all the way to Denver, through Hampton, Santa Fe up, which is interesting to us too. So we've done a lot of swap and bartering around that, where not only are they using some of our conduit, they're also providing us fiber, but they also, in this case, are contributing to the Wolf Creek Pass build financially, which has helped ease some of the match requirements to our grant that we had going on there. So that, hopefully that answers your question. And they're already very active. We're already working with local counties. They're already working with the Southwest COG. They're already working with several partners in the area. So it's good. They haven't put a shovel in the ground yet, but they're getting closer. The CEO came and saw me 2 weeks ago, and it looks like some good progress there. They are still working out their partnerships requirements for the other states. So once they get those ironed out, I'm sure we'll see a shovel in the ground a lot faster. I think here you are asking, is CDOT and or CDOT partner installing fiber? Oh, wait, oops, I'll come back to yours, Tim, here in a minute. Is there money for DOT fiber in the federal 65 billion grant? Interesting enough, you can use some of that infrastructure money for fiber for the DOTs. That is something that is allowed as an infrastructure. It's above us. That those funding that we get from the Fed to the state of Colorado is really being handled by the governor's office and so forth. I know the Colorado Broadband Office is engaged in those conversations. So are we. We provided a wish list of fiber to build into, the rings I was showing. We want to build on many of those routes. So we're kind of sitting tight to see how that will pan out, and hopefully we'll see some money to help the DOT. Now, I will say, if a partner is already in an MSA with us, there is some opportunities to talk about joint trenching and some joint sharing of costs and some other things that are easier to have those conversations, because the MSA already exists with those partners. Then if I would have to go out to an RFP to solicit, if anyone wants to build these for us. That's not our intent, but I will say, if there's any provider inside of MSA with us, they'll be aware of, obviously, our efforts in those areas as well, because we are able to reach out to them since they are in MSA with us. Tim, is CDOT and or a partner installing fiber always available for dark fiber lease? And if so, are they leased at a uniform rate? So kind of, and yes, and so forth. So let me kind of explain. So when CDOT installs fiber, it is available for anyone to lease if it's available. We have to first take care of the transportation needs first. We try to put it 144 count everywhere uniformly, sometimes 216, because we do know there's some people that are going to need some fiber, and we just want to have some buffer there. We've done a really good job in trying to conserve our fiber use by using CWDM and coarse wave and dense wave multiplexers to really be successful around conserving our fiber, so there is availability. And yes, it is a consistent rate. I will tell you, we have a verbal agreement, and it's only right that we do it, that we will not compete with the private sector on that, because there are some that sell dark fiber on our interstates as well, and we don't want to compete with them. That's not our purpose. But we are an alternative to use. Right now our rate structure, I'll tell you what it is today. It might go up a little bit because we seem to be right at or slightly below on some routes than the industry, and that, like I said, that's not where we want to be. But currently we're at $3,500 per strand per mile for 20 years, and then you divide by 20 years, and then there's a 3% O&M charge starting in year 2 and on. And that's what we do at the private sector, and then the public sector is half that. We are looking at making that closer to $4,500, another $1,000 more per strand per mile for 20 years, to try to make sure we're not competing against the private industry. That's not what we want. The uniformity rate is uniformed, and that is caused some concerns. The private sector has asked that we align in their structure a little bit better, and that might be part of our survey questions. I know that there's pluses on the way we handle it because we're easy to deal with in this sense, but in some ways we are actually too competitive against the private industry, and that's not what we want to do. Now, let me throw another caveat. There are 2 routes in which we have signed a private-public partnership with Arcadian in this case, as well as Zayo, whereas they have first right of refusal to sell dark fiber before we are allowed to on that route, on specific routes. And so that's out of fairness to them because they've had such a large investment into building 300 plus miles of fiber. We want to respect that they need to recover their investment for doing that. So we will not compete on those routes. Now, we can still support public, what we consider political subdivisions, but we are not allowed to actually compete against them on the private sector. Now, if they technically cannot support the request on those routes, we receive a letter from them saying that they cannot technically support this customer. Therefore, CDOT, you have the ability to sell them dark fiber, and that's usually they have to do that within 30 days. So, so that's where we're at right now. Boy, now we got questions coming in and they're going faster than I can see. So bear with me as I try to go through them. From Chad, can you ask if? Oh, repeat the 3 W's he mentioned. So Chad, so the 3 W's I'm talking about is a win for the industry, a win for the state, and a win for the constituency of the state who are also the consumer of the industry. When you do a P3, you should always try to get 3 W's. You should always make sure, and I'm preaching from my seat, which I represent the state. I am always interested in the transportation perspective, then the state initiatives, and then the constituents, and then the industry. I mean, it's just natural. I'm a public servant, so we have to kind of go through that pecking order. But at the end of the day, when I'm working at P3 and I'm trying to figure out the business terms, let's be considerate of making sure we try to walk away from the negotiation table with all 3 people winning or 3 parties winning. I always believe that the constituency of the state, the public, the traveling public, and the consumers, in this case, internet, let's just say it's internet, should win off of this. And so, when I think of a 3 W's, let's go through a use case. One would be, it is cheaper for a P3 to throw in conduit fiber than it is to pay green dollars out of their pocket for right-of-way use, because their buying power to possibly put in conduit fiber could be, let's just say, for example, $5 a foot, whereas I value that at $25 a foot. So if I turn around and tell you, well, you got to pay me green dollars at $5 a foot or $25, that's a lot of cash out the pocket. But if I tell you to do it at $5, if I value your $5 investment and it's valued at $25, for 20-year access on the right of way, it's cheap to go that way. That's a win for the industry. But guess what? That's also a win for the consumer of the internet companies, because why? It's a lot cheaper than to pay private landowners all the way through to get that fiber built. And hopefully, my hope, I don't have to say on this because it's not regulated, but it should pass on to cost savings that should hopefully be cheaper and affordable internet service. I benefit because the transportation network just got better and it's safer for the public to travel on. Those are how you're getting those W's to work. Does that help, Chad? Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it, Chad. Any thoughts around it, please share. I'm trying to keep this mental state around it. So thanks, Chad, for encouragement. Let's keep moving to the REAs. Consider public. Public is political subdivision. So they would have to be a political subdivision that's classified by the state statute. That's what we're classifying as public. REAs are interesting as well, because it's kind of interesting from our perspective of a public partnership, because it's not really public, it's not really private, but it's kind of in the middle because it's a regulated service. Because here's why it's interesting. They usually need fiber. I usually need power. And so it's really nice to not be prescriptive in that case, because we could probably swap. Now I'll pay the monthly fee, but there's always a bill associated to getting the power to some rural part of the state that I need, random power at. So those are an interesting one, because I do work with a lot of power companies. I know there's been some out there that have been saying, how do I get involved? It's really reach out to me, and Ed, maybe you can share all my contact information. We're going to make it easier and better. We are going to improve the website so that there's easier accessibility around this, but we're fine tuning our data. But the REAs are very interested. We work with a lot of them, and they've been good partners in the rural broadband discussion as a whole. Dell, are all CDOT fiber asset routes open? Are there some early release restrictives? Customer, if so, leases being perfect to be open. So is there CDOT plans to fiberize additional areas of the state? Okay, so I can share KMZs and share all that to you. It's all open. We have to treat everyone consistently, Dell. So yes, everyone should have access if it's available. That's the key. Is I can't get rid of all my fiber, but I treat everyone equally and consistently, and that is the key. So yes, you're allowed to, if they're all open. When I show, let me see if I get the other map. You know what? Well, let me get my other map, just so since we're talking, since you're asking those questions, I will get you a KMZ and a splice diagram. Oops, hold on, give me a second here. Okay, you all can see that. This is the fiber routes. They're all open. Now, we do have some problems inside downtown Denver, so please don't ask to go to 9, 10, 15th Street. It's such a headache. Anyone that deals with it is just, I pull my hair out every time I get downtown. But we just don't have enough fiber there, and it's a splicing nightmare. But we can get you from the interstate, like 8th Avenue and 925, and get you close if you can find your way in. You just remember, we're more of a middle mile dark fiber support, and we will offer fiber on majority of these routes. The only one that's restricted, where you would have to work with our partner, is where the screen line is with Zayo, and the soon-to-be line that will go on 285 all the way diagonally down. If you're private, public, you can come and talk to us still about it. So, and you know what? We have plans. In fact, we have proposal that if we get that infrastructure money, what we're going to try to do with that infrastructure money is pre-release some of those routes we want to do. And if you're in an existing MSA with us, or those are the easiest ones to deal with. But if people are interested in those, let's have that conversation and see what it means around it. Hopefully, Dell, I kind of answered your question around that. Yep, thank you for sending that out. So Dell, did I answer that question? Okay.
It's a start. Thank you.
It's a start. Send me an email if we need to have more conversations.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we'll be doing, my GIS, so it's been tough, as we all heard. I will say, there's no excuse for some delayed information going out. We are going to do a couple things. Let me tell you our go forward strategy, what I'm trying to do here. One, like I said, we're going to get a survey that's going to go out. Two, I'm going to look at how we can create like a choose your own adventure. So if you want to do the P3 and it's a little bit longer process, a lot more negotiation, get into a master services agreement, do bartering and swapping, or lease dark fiber, you can go down this path. Ideally, what I want to do, and I don't want to lead the witness before a survey, but I think it's definitely beneficial to talk about, well, I just want a fee for access kind of route. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to go get my permit, pay my fee, my annual fee to access the right of way. Very similar to the small cell regulation that comes from the FCC. I'm thinking of taking that and being consistent with that, which is basically if you use our infrastructure, you pay an annual fee for the infrastructure use. And you just go in and you do it through PayPal if you want, and you just pay when you go get your permit. But I do want to mix a flavor. I want to investigate a little bit more around Arizona DOT and what they're doing. They're doing some great work down there. I also want to blend in what Utah DOT is doing, and kind of make sure we have that fee really tightened down and really be affordable and not prohibitable, right? We want to make sure that people have access to our right of way. But we also want to follow the statutes that we've been prescribed, that have been given to us about compensation for the use of the right of way. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards doing, but I don't want to be too descriptive till I see results of a survey that will go out to several folks, industry folks, partner folks, just regular consumers. I just want everyone to chime in their thought. And that'll be coming out this fall. And then we're also here at CDOT to ensure that we're a little bit more efficient. We don't have a lot of people around that are proficient in the subject. So I have to do a lot of teaching around here. But one of the things I will do is put in a customer relation management module to allow people that want to use our right of way and get into master service agreements to be a little bit more self-serving and engaging through a CRM. And then also to improve our invoicing system for those that are paying, because sometimes what happens is we're clunky like that because we're not used to. We only bill on small cells right now, and there's not a lot of those. But now that this is getting bigger and bigger, and we're releasing more fiber and stuff than we have in the past, we've got to have some automation, and that's what those two systems are going to do, is help automate our processes. So you're going to see some efficiencies there, and then. One of the things I'm advocating internally, and we're not quite there, but we are discussing it. There is a Mobile Now Act that the FCC kicked out that requires the FHWA to do some rulemaking around broadband coordination. Specifically, they expect every DOT to have a broadband coordinator here. We did do our analysis. We did give our feedback. We do feel it's an unfunded mandate, but I don't necessarily discredit that it's needed. And what the broadband coordinator would do, if approved by leadership, and if it does become an FHWA rule to us, what it would do is better coordination between the industry and our big projects. That is an area I feel that we can do a little bit better as well. Whereas you have fiber in the ground, or if we're tearing it all open, how do we get better coordination with open shared cost, open trench opportunities? Right now we do it through a bid net, and that's not always inclusive, but hopefully people are seeing it. But could we actually have like a call out list and a broadband coordinator that could be contacted to coordinate those efforts between the projects and what ISPs and providers are trying to do? I think there's value there. We need to continue to tease out that conversation a little bit more and what it looks like, and see if leadership would support those full-time employees that we would need to have on staff to make that a repeatable and sustainable program. And of course, if it's federally required in the near future, then obviously we're gonna have to dig into our pockets and find it. So that's another thing I think we need to do, and that's where we probably need the most advocating is around how do we do better broadband coordination and make sure that the DOT has the best staffing possible to support the industry. So, any questions around that? Oh wait, acronyms, Andrea. What does that mean? What is that? What was it? FHWA. Which one was it, Andrea? Which acronym did I? Darn it, I threw out and didn't clarify. Oh, MSA, Master Services Agreement, and I did not explain that. You are absolutely right. So master service. So when I came here, I came from industry, and when I came here, one of the issues, and I just want to explain why the Master Services Agreement is so important. When I came here, you would get into an agreement for every section of the road, and it was so painful to get through it. I actually evolved into getting into a Master Services Agreement. And every time you used the highway, it was a task order. It was a transactional 3-day task order. It took only 3 days to process. The MSA is really your T's and C's, or your terms and conditions. And so I wanted to transform this area of the government to be more business friendly, more business oriented, versus being so structured around a very long, lengthy process for very strong terms. In our MSA, we do allow some redlining to a point, which typically government contracts don't allow redlining. We do that to be more flexible with industry, which does add time, but I think it's necessary to make sure we meet the needs of all. So hopefully that helps. P3 means public-private partnership or public-public partnership. So it's a tongue twister. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So Nancy, for those that didn't reading, I mean, awesome, Nancy. Absolutely. We do probably need to have them. That's a bigger discussion at the time. Man, I want the REAs to do more, but as you know, Nancy, and it sounds like you're pretty proficient in this area, obviously, but there's some REAs that are just gung-ho around this broadband and fiber thing that are great, and there's some that are very pulled back and reserved. And so it would be nice if we got some uniformity and around that, because it's exciting to see the REAs participating in the real broadband discussion. So absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Great job, Nancy. Chad's Wikipedia. Oh, you put it out there. Thanks, Chad. All right, any other questions or comments? Well, hopefully today, I just want to conclude, if there aren't any, just to conclude, hey, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Ed. Thanks to the Colorado Broadband Office and OIT. Absolutely, Nancy, give me a holler. The more we can talk, the more conversations we have, the better we serve all, right? So, and if anyone wants me to come speak to their boards or groups or whatever, I'll be more than happy to share thoughts, and I'd love to get feedback. So please share feedback. But to conclude, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to the Office of Information Technology, OIT, and the Colorado Broadband Office for allowing this opportunity for me to kind of share a glimpse into my crazy brain and the chaos within CDOT. There's a lot of improvements happening today. They're just not out there yet. Please, if you're interested in getting on some lists around this, Ed, maybe if you can give me a list, I can at least start storing a list of folks, or shoot me an email that you want to be on a list. As things progress and more documents are hitting our website, I will absolutely be able to pull you into like a newsletter that we're going to start as well, to say, hey, we finally published our newest KMZ. Hey, our splice points are here. Hey, we have available fiber here. Hey, we're going to do a project here. Anyone interested in joining in? Those things I think are important, and I'm still building that communication list up. We hope to launch something next year around an improved environment around this. So please stay tuned, stay connected. If you go to the CDOT website and you look up Intelligent Transportation Systems, my stuff is there, my contact, my phone number, everything's posted. We did pull a lot of things down, and we're putting them back up because we have to meet some other federal requirements. And so we had to rebuild our portion of the website to meet those federal requirements. I swear, government, darn it, always putting rules on us. Anyways, thank you very much for the time, Ed, and I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. Great information. And if you haven't been following us this year, what we've tried to do is bring in groups that are trying to solve the internet infrastructure, the fiber issues across the state. And obviously, Bob has been a huge partner in that. He's worked closely with our office. We appreciate all that he's done. Lunch and Learn is a monthly offering. We have subjects that we hope interest you. If you have any thoughts or ideas, things that you'd like to see, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I can be reached at ed.mills, M-I-L-L-S, at state.co.us. And today's Lunch and Learn, as well as all the Lunch and Learns that we've done for the last several years, are posted on our new broadband website, which can be found at broadband.colorado.gov. Now, give us about 2 to 7 days to get that up there. I like to give Bob an opportunity, or whoever our presenter is, a chance to take a look at it, see if we need to make any edits. But we'll get that up as soon as we can. We have a lot of tasks, and we have a small staff. And so we get the work pumped out as quickly as we can. But again, we want to thank you for your time. We know your time is valuable to us. We appreciate this time you've had with us. Very informative. Thank you, Bob. Always great when you're with us. And everyone have a great day. Take care.